Hello all, welcome to the Solocast of Firecode Tech. In these episodes, it's just going to be me, your host, Gus Gagliardi. There's going to be a range of topics, but I'm going to talk about specific technologies, installation standards, codes and how they work, as well as some other interesting topics that don't neatly fit inside of the context of a normal interview. Hello all, welcome to Solocast number 41. In this episode, we're going to be talking about fire pumps again. We talked about fire pumps originally in episode 9 of the Solocast series. In this episode, we're going to talk about some different topics. Some of those topics I'm looking to dive deeper into in this Solocast episode are code provisions, standards around fire pumps. We'll see how far we go in the episode, but just wanted to give a preface so you would have a map to decide whether you're interested in and some idea of where this episode is headed. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media. Also, if you want to drop me a line about a Solocast topic that you want to hear about or a interview guest that you might think would be a good fit, please either drop me a note in the comments or you can contact me at ggagliardi@firecodetech.com. That's GAGLIARDI at firecodetech.com. So I want to start out this episode talking about the code section that pertains to fire pumps. So when I say code, a lot of people will use this term flippantly, but generally what I'm referring to is the International Building Code, as that is what is adopted in the majorities of the jurisdictions that I have experience in or that I do work in. And this is in reference to specifically commercial projects, not Department of Defense or other government or state entities. So when I say code, I mean the International Building Code. And so a lot of times I'll try to specify what edition I am looking at when I'm making these episodes, but just wanted to add that clarification note. So for this episode, we're looking at the 2021 International Building Code, and specifically we are looking in Chapter 9, Section 913, which is titled Fire Pumps. Let's take a look at one of the first pieces of information in Section 913 for fire pumps, and this is titled General, and it gives a bit of the philosophy for this section in the building code and when you need to look at this section in the building code. It states 913.1 General. Section goes on to say, where provided, fire pumps for fire protection systems shall be installed in accordance with this section and NFPA 20. So that gives you some idea when you have already determined that a fire pump is required and you are looking to dive into the requirements for this fire pump and the space in which you enclose the fire pump, you want to look at Section 913 in the building code and NFPA 20. So 913 is not very long, so I'm just going to hit the high notes for other pieces of information in this section that would be valuable. So if you're going to design a fire pump, might as well go back and scan through this section just as a sanity check or as a checklist for things to make sure that you have given thoughtful consideration for in your design. The next section is protection against interruption of service, and that is 913.2. It states, the fire pump, driver, and controller shall be protected in accordance with NFPA 20 against possible interruption of service through damage caused by explosion, fire, flood, earthquake, rodents, insects, windstorm, freezing, vandalism, and other adverse conditions. A great topic to consider when thinking about fire pumps is the programmatic or code-required features of the fire pump room. These are often forgotten, and even by professionals that are experienced in implementing fire pump design. So you can rest assured that individuals who have no experience with fire pumps or limited experience with fire pumps will forget these issues, and they can be very costly if you have to implement fire pump programmatic space requirements late stage design or in construction. So a subpart to this 13.2 is 13.2.1, protection of fire pump rooms. It states, fire pumps shall be located in rooms that are separated from all other areas of the building by 2-hour fire barriers, constructed in accordance with Section 707, or 2-hour horizontal assemblies constructed in accordance with Section 711, or both. And there are a couple exceptions to this code provision, and it states, in other than high-rise buildings, separation by 1-hour fire barriers constructed in accordance with Section 707, or 1-hour horizontal assemblies constructed in accordance with Section 711, or both, shall be permitted in buildings equipped throughout with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with Section 903.3.1.1 or 903.3.1.2. So this exception is really frequently taken in buildings that are not high-rise buildings. You have a sprinkler system, the building is sprinklered throughout, then you can utilize this exception to not have the fire pump room or fire pump building enclosed in a 2-hour barrier. You can just have a 1-hour barrier around the space. And so if you're in a high rise, you still have to provide the 2-hour fire barrier. But yeah, this is a really common section that is utilized, and the rating around the fire pump room is missed. I don't know about often, but it's sometimes missed. The second exception states, separation is not required for fire pumps physically separated from the building in accordance with NFPA 20. So if you pull your fire pump out of the building with the separation distance in accordance with NFPA 20, then you don't have to rate your enclosure. And this is something that commonly happens because people don't want to give up the floor space within the building to the fire pump. So the fire pump is frequently pulled out of the building into its own pump building or pump enclosure. This is, of course, all under the assumption that you have the space on your site to locate a fire pump enclosure or a fire pump building, and you don't have site constraints that would not allow you to locate a structure outside of the building, which can also be a common occurrence. 913.2.2 goes on to talk about some electrical requirements for fire pumps. This section is called Circuits Supplying Fire Pumps. So there is information about the survivability in the UL listing criteria in this section, and it states, cables used for survivability of circuits of supplying fire pumps shall be protected using one of the following methods. Number 1, cables used for survivability of required critical circuits shall be listed in accordance with UL 2196 and shall have a fire resistance rating of not less than 1 hour. The second provision of this section states, electrical circuit protective systems shall have a fire resistance rating of not less than 1 hour. Electrical circuit protective systems shall be installed so that they are in accordance with their listing requirements. Number 3, construction having a fire resistance rating of not less than 1 hour. Number 4, the cable or raceway is encased in a minimum of 2 inches of concrete. And there's an exception for number 4. It states, this section shall not apply to cables or portions of cables located within a fire pump room or generator room, which is separated from the remainder of the occupancy with fire resistance rated construction. Moving on, we're going to talk about the next section, which is 913.3, and this provision is for freeze protection of fire pump rooms. The title is Temperature of Pump Room, and it states, suitable means shall be provided for maintaining the temperature of a pump room or pump house where required, above 40 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Celsius. So this is a great reminder for you to coordinate with your mechanical engineer on the project and your electrical engineer on the project to make sure that you have a unit heater within your fire pump room space or pump house or pump package, because it's a code requirement and it would be a pain. I've had projects where the mechanical and electrical portions of the unit heater were not coordinated. You have to worry about what kind of power you're getting if you have a remote pump house, and making sure that this detail is coordinated is a great way to show value to other disciplines that you understand the niche requirements for fire pumps. There's a further recommendation as a subpart below, and it's 913.3.1, and it says engine manufacturer's recommendation. It says recommendation, which usually means that it's not a code requirement, but let's read the section. Temperature of the fire pump room, pump house, or area where engines are installed shall never be less than the minimum recommended engine manufacturer. The engine manufacturer's recommendations for oil heaters shall be followed. So obviously this is a requirement, and you'll see this for many pieces of fire and life safety equipment, is that they'll be installed in accordance with their listing criteria. So generally there are some pretty reasonable tolerances in the listing criteria, so check that out for your engine and get some data from your manufacturer if you are unable to tell from the cut sheets or data sheets that you pulled for your fire pump. 913.4 is titled Valve Supervision. It states, where provided, the fire pump suction discharge and bypass valves and isolation valves on the backflow prevention device or assembly shall be supervised open by one of the following methods. Number 1, central station, proprietary or remote signaling service. Number 2, local signaling service that will cause the sounding of an audible signal at a constantly attended location. Number 3, locking valves open. Number 4, sealing valves and approved weekly record inspection where valves are located within fenced enclosures under the control of the owner. So this section talks about how you need to supervise your valves to make sure that they are not tampered with, to make sure that somebody does not close a normally open valve or open a normally closed valve. And so probably the two that I've seen the most are either locks and chains or proprietary or remote signaling station service. So tamper switches that are monitored by a fire alarm system, or locks and chains on valves to make sure that they stay in the position that they're intended. Once again, just to reiterate, I said it in the beginning, but we are looking at these requirements in the 2021 building code. This section is 913.4.1, and it's titled Test Outlet Valve Supervision, and it says the fire pump test outlet valves shall be supervised in the closed position. Usually I don't see the actual hose connections for the test header supervised, but what you will see is a control valve in the test header piping that will be supervised. So this says specifically test outlet valve supervision. So I guess that checks out with that line of thinking. Last section in 913 states 913.5, which is acceptance test. Acceptance testing shall be done in accordance with the requirements for NFPA 20. Originally, I had intended to cover a variety of topics in this episode, but it's such a nice little chunk of information to go through the code requirements for fire pumps, and incredibly important because you cannot miss something that is directly, implicated in the code, or else you are going to be liable. And so it's a huge deal to understand these code requirements. So really wanted to focus on the code provisions for this episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to drop me a line if you want to chat fire and life safety or have recommendations for the podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.